Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name's Shirly White. My husband. Somewhere.
Over here. Mouthful.
Thank you all for coming to this event to support our next Attorney General, Joe Salazar. Before I introduce my friend Amy Zuckerman, I just want to tell you briefly kind of why Eric and I are doing this and why we support Joe. Eric and I have two daughters, age 8 and 10, and they're running around here somewhere too. And neither of us neither of us was born on third base. You've heard that kind of analogy of having a head start in life. I'm an immigrant myself. I moved to the States when I was 3 years old from Seoul, Korea. And I'm the daughter of immigrants. And Eric is the grandson of a distillery worker from Kentucky. And his dad was the first in his family to go to college. And you know, we had a chance though. We worked hard. We have a very comfortable life. We have a beautiful home, and we're grateful for everything we have. And Eric and I often vote against our actual own financial interest and our own interest because I see it actually is in the interest of my children not to live in a community and not to live in a world where it's so disparate. That's actually not in the interest of my children. And so whether we take a hit in the pocketbook, we know that the return on our investment actually to have equity in a community and a life for our children. And you know, and Aaron Brockett, council member from City of Boulder, and I were just talking earlier about, will our children be able to live here in the City of Boulder? I mean, is that even a chance where Cherry and Aaron, you know, take their grandkids out for a walk because they live 2 neighborhoods over? We don't know. So we know that folks like Joe Salazar and folks like Edie Hooton, our state representative, and folks like Aaron Brockett are kind of paving the way, city level, state level, to kind of make this a reality. I want to introduce my friend Amy Zuckerman. Amy and I served on the City of Boulder Human Relations Commission together. And I'll just, other than all the amazing policy initiatives, not the least of which is Indigenous Peoples Day, that Amy spearheaded, what I love about Amy is that she was always so kind and respectful to the people who spoke to the Human Relations Commission and the staff. And maybe you think, well, that's expected, that's what people ought to do, but people don't do that. And so Amy modeled for not just me personally and not just for our commissioners, but also for staff and other community advocates about how to be in this world and how to be with each other. And I think we've found post last national election that this is a standard that's being chipped away at, and I'm honored to have my friend Amy here.
That's great. I think I'm going to leave now because that was so good, and I don't want to disprove. I'll try to stand right here. Pull away. Okay, usually it's
That's usually our karaoke mic, so
I will not be doing karaoke.
There you go.
So I would like to share my experience with Joe Salazar and why I'm here and standing up before you for him. When we were working on Indigenous Peoples Day, bringing that to Boulder and seeing the benefit in that, we knew that we had, as with any, I guess, social justice issue, you anticipate that you have an uphill climb, and you better bring the people who can represent your issue. You get the best folks you can. Find out who they are, meet them, describe what you're working toward, and invite them, give them that opportunity to join with you. Although it's kind of scary to reach out to people you don't really know. And so that's what I did. I reached out to Joe, and I was a little bit scared, and I said, hey, listen, we're going to go before City Council on this. And I know you don't live in Boulder, but would you consider coming and speaking before Boulder City Council? And Joe was really, not only did he say yes, but he lent kind of his name behind getting some other real luminaries there, including Ernest House Jr., who runs the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs, We also had the head historian of the Sand Creek Massacre site. We had more than one expert in terms of being a historian about Sand Creek and about the history of where we're standing right now and the original peoples who were here. So I appreciate Joe, first kind of chronologically for that. And because we had done all the research about Columbus Day and the fact that it isn't really observed in the city of Boulder, and we looked at that, and that was kind of one of the key things in getting Indigenous Peoples Day approved in a permanent resolution, not just once in a year or two ago, but a permanent piece of our legislation here. And I went to the state capitol and spoke to Joe's commission on what Boulder had done. And I have to tell you that I really encourage everyone to do that. Edie, I'm sure you're so smooth when you did that, but when you speak in that body, but I was terrified, and I'm fine, obviously, this is not the first time I've been on the mic. I was terrified, and, but I did it.
Amy.
What's that?
You were great.
Okay.
Your testimony was great.
But I do encourage everyone should have that experience to see what happens there. And this was the second time that Joe had introduced a bill abolishing Columbus Day for several reasons behind that. It did not pass, but I will tell you that Joe earned even more of my respect because that room was a very hot room. It was very divided. It was incredibly contentious. The room was divided right down the middle in terms of the audience. And I'm going to say this in kind of simple terms based on our audience here, but there was real despicable behavior that I observed among our state legislators. And I was so offended that I couldn't speak about it for days, and I can usually speak about everything. I was horrified, and my next thought was what? We all gotta run. We all gotta run for office, because if this is the bar, it's low, except for you, Edie. You guys are hot. But people are going low. Make no mistake that people are going low. So everyone, get that, I don't care if you don't think you have enough stature or whatnot, that you're not the right person, you are, because I saw people in that room. I couldn't believe that, Joe, this is what you deal with. I don't know what other way to say that. Anyway, that's why I'm here to support Joe. I'm so glad all of you came out. And now it's my great honor to introduce Aaron Brockett. And I'll tell you some of the issues that he cares about. He is 2 years into his first four-year term on Boulder City Council. And some of the issues that he cares about: affordable housing, homelessness, transportation, what am I missing? Affordable housing, did I say that? Human services in general. He's always been a great supporter of issues that I've brought forward to City Council. And he also is Boulder's representation on the Denver Regional Council of Governments for Boulder. So with that, he works on collective transportation solutions. So thank you for that, Aaron. Come on up and
Thank you, Amy. And Amy, thank you so much for your service on the Human Relations Commission. You did phenomenal work there and really moved the needle on some important issues in your time here, so thank you very much. I want to place Joe's work and his candidacy on a little bit in the national and the state context here. So we know, of course, that we have a president and an administration that are doing outrageous things on a daily basis, right? I mean, one of the very first things that they did was evict the water protectors from Standing Rock so that they could shove the Keystone pipeline down their throat. We've got them, the president encouraging police brutality. We've got them encouraging the discrimination against LGBT folks, trying to get rid of the noble transgender people who serve in our military. And just every day we get something new happening. It's just kind of hard to comprehend that our society is getting to this point. And what we need at this stage in our state and in our country is people who will fight this, who will not stand by and allow it to happen, but will take a really strong role and have a strong voice in opposing these things. And attorneys general at the states have a real opportunity here. There is, as the voice for the law at the state level, there is an opportunity for the attorney general to stand up to these outrages that we're getting from the president and make a difference. So we need Joe's strong voice. I am convinced that Joe's voice would be the strongest one against those things that we're seeing from the administration. So. And of course, as the state attorney general, state issues would be of paramount importance. I just want to highlight one issue, which is that of oil and gas regulation. It's very topical right now. The oil and gas industry is very loosely regulated in the state. There is very little allowance given to local governments to regulate the impacts of oil and gas development. And in part because of that, there was an explosion not long ago that killed 2 people in their basement in their home. And even after that terrible event, the state legislature was unable to make even some common sense additional regulations of the oil and gas industry. Joe has always been a strong voice in standing up to that industry. Meanwhile, our current attorney general is filing lawsuits against our county when they try to do some level of protection for our local residents against the oil and gas industry. So it's critical that we shift that office to a Democrat and to Joe in particular so that we can protect our residents, regulate that industry so that it is far more safe than it is today. And that's just one of many, many issues that I know Joe would be very strong on. I think every day in that office, he would support people over power and the common good over corporations. So please write a hefty check and get out there and support Joe in this election. It is now my honor to introduce Representative Edie Hooton. She was elected last year to Colorado State House. It is her first elected office. She fills the seat of our esteemed former Speaker of the House, Dickie Lee Hollinghorst. She and her husband Jim have lived in Boulder for 20 years and have 2 kids in college. She's the past president of the Democratic Women of Boulder County and is known as a strong and effective advocate for progressive candidates and local nonprofits and supports women's health care, reproductive rights, access to education for minorities, the underserved, and social justice. And she's been doing a fantastic job in her first term at the State House. So, Edie.
Thank you, Aaron. So first of all, thank you, Shirley and Eric, for opening up your home and for sponsoring this event for Joe. And I can just say, this is a long race, and he's his ground game is superior. And I know that statewide because of the relationships I have around the state. I think clearly you have to raise money for a race to have visibility and credibility. But the ground game, especially in races like this, are tremendously important. And I'm very excited and encouraged by that, Joe. And I want to thank you all for being here. So as a freshman, my seat is directly behind Joe's seat. And we are in the northwestern part of the House chambers, and they slope down, so we refer to ourselves as the tree house because we can see everything that goes on. We have a freshman who's every freshman gets a mentor, and I have the tremendous privilege of having Representative Jonathan Singer here. And if anyone is a champion of social justice and human rights, it's Jonathan Singer, paralleled with Joe Salazar. But Jonathan is my mentor, and Joe mentors Representative Leslie Herod, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with Leslie, but she is a tour de force, and I will have to tell you that that speaks a lot to who Joe is, that the House leadership assigned him as Leslie's mentor. And something else, fun fact, lots of fun facts about Joe. One of them is that he is a member of a notorious group called the Doghouse Dems. And they come by that moniker, honestly. And these are a group of Democrats who will put their values and their passions before anything else. And 90% of the time it's with leadership and it's with the party, but sometimes you just have to step out of bounds and say, you know what, this is my priority and these are my people, and this is, or this is, I'm going to do what I think is right. And Joe always does it. Always does it for the middle class, for the poor, for the minority community, for the underserved. And this is a man, I am telling you, because every bill he has comes before my committee, because I'm the House State Affairs Committee, and we get all of his bills. And then he sits in front of me and he goes down to the well, just like Representative Singer, swings for the fences on everything. And right now, our country is in a place where we need Democrats to swing for the fences for us. He is an attorney. He comes from a place where he really understands disparity and challenges and pain and suffering and what it takes. Shirley, you spoke to this so well about those among us who have had opportunities and privileges and haven't had to experience that, and using our weight and measure to support those who need our help. And Joe is not only an attorney, he is brilliantly articulate, completely focused, and so one example, and we were speaking, and we spoke to the Indigenous Peoples Day bill, which came before a committee I sit on, and your testimony was really great, Amy, so. I think the committee was over at 1 or 1:30 in the morning. And then you had your right to rest bill, and that went to 3:30 in the morning. Passions are really high, really high, really high. But Joe comes and he speaks so clearly. He stays right on the most important points. He doesn't insult. He doesn't ostracize. He just, as I said, swings for the fences. And I think right now in Colorado, we are in such great need, not of just credentials or the ability to raise money, but we need someone who's going to represent all of us. And with a really clear, strong voice, and not just the oil and gas industry, and a handful of other industries, which is what our current Attorney General is doing. And it is such a pleasure and honor for me to support Joe and go to bat for him the way he goes to bat for everyone else in this state. So thank you all for being here, and it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague and my good friend, Joe Salazar.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you so much for being here. Shirley and Eric, thank you so much for opening your home again. I really appreciate it. Your girls, the wonderful posters that they made. No subliminal messaging there. I mean, they were pretty just direct. Vote for Joe. I think I saw one that said, yeah, only smart people vote for Joe. I think. That's awesome. And I wish I would have brought my little one as I did last year, but Lily's been on a statewide tour with me these past couple of weeks, and being 9 years old, going on a statewide tour with her dad tuckered her out when we got in last night, so she stayed home. But I really appreciate it, Amy, Darren, Aaron. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and the wonderful Edie Hooton. She's a hoot at the Capitol. She is so funny. She sits right behind me, and I hear all her snarky remarks when people are presenting on bills, and I just get I should really start writing down a lot of her remarks because they are just amazing and they're so funny. But one of the things that really distinguishes a state representative, in my opinion, is when you lead from a position of humanity. And I've been saying that for the past year because that's how I described supporting Bernie Sanders last year. I said he really leads from a position of humanity. And I've tried to mirror that as a state representative. And so seeing Edie and then of course Jonathan, both of these state reps, that's how they do things. They lead from a position of humanity, and that's really vitally important in this day and age, isn't it? That we remain humanitarians in our approach to absolutely everything. And that's what I've seen from them. And there have been a couple of times when Edie and I have disagreed on a bill, and we just like, she's like, no, Joe, you can't get my vote. Come on, Edie. No, I'll buy a breakfast burrito. No. And we just don't come to terms on it. But it's always with love, with always. I mean, we always, say, okay, well, fine. That's cool. I mean, that's your vote. That's the power that a state representative has. And so and with Jonathan, I don't think we've ever disagreed. We did on one bill, I think. There's
always one.
There's always one. But the point being is that I've seen their work and I've seen what they do for people, and it's a privilege being here with the two of you. It really is. Yesterday I really had a long drive back from Salida. I've been on a statewide tour. I was in the San Luis Valley where my family is from, and I marched in the Monte Vista parade there. People saw me, and I think they were family members because pretty much everyone in the valley is related. Hey, primo, ¿qué pasó? I'm gonna vote for you, And then I'm marching through the parade, feeling really good about that. And then I drove to Salida because we had a Democratic function in Chaffee County. And when I left there, I was irritated. I was irritated, and I just couldn't figure out why. Until, and this is the odd thing of it all, I reached the top of Fremont Pass where the climax mine is. And so my angst climax at that moment, and I figured out what it was that was bothering me. And what it is that for 5 years, I have been a state representative. I've been an elected official. And I've put myself on the line for communities, right? Bringing bills such as the repeal of Columbus Day, replacing with Indigenous Peoples Day, or bringing bills to help out the homeless community, bringing bills to help out poor folks and our disenfranchised communities, bringing bills for the Latino community and for the African American community, right? For women's reproductive rights, and just so many things that sometimes Democrats see as toxic. And I've been willing to bring those bills and built a reputation around that, right? And people know me throughout the state because they're like, man, you're a lightning rod, Salazar. I mean, you're not afraid of doing these things. And it occurred to me that what was bothering me the most is that as an elected official, you have the privilege and the power of doing some amazing things for people. But you also put yourself on the line. And you hold yourself accountable to the people through your votes. And I haven't been afraid to do that. And so as I go across the state and I see my opponents talking, it dawned on me. They're just talking. They've never had to put themselves on the line. They've never had the NRA having their crew come down upon you. of having people threaten you and your family at your house. They never had RMGO make threats against you. They never had the oil and gas companies fund your opponent at such a high level that it seemed doubtful that you could win. They've never had to put themselves on the line that way. And yet they still talk. And I thought to myself, you know what? Yeah, there's a privilege and power of being an elected official. And when I have said these past 5 years that I was going to protect the disenfranchised, that I was going to protect our communities of color, that I would fight like hell to protect my daughters and their right to make whatever life they want to make for themselves, to protect the LGBTQ community. When I said that I was going to do those things, I have done it each and every single time. Because that's what I said I was going to do. And come hell or high water, whether it was people in Pueblo mad at me for going after Columbus Day or not, I was going to protect a community that has been much maligned in human history, which is the American Indian community. And I was going to do that, and I did. And so when I stand before you today and I say that on day one when I become Attorney General, literally day one, that Martinez appeal is going to be withdrawn. And I can say that. And I have been asking my opponents to take stances on that, and they refuse to, which got to the other part of why I'm irritated. Because when I sit there and think about the fact that they've never put themselves on the line for anything, and yet they're running their mouths about everything, then I start thinking to myself, well, this must just be talk, because they're accepting money from oil and gas. They're accepting money from all the big attorneys out there who represent all the big interests that really control the legislature. And I don't. I represent the people. And I accept money from the people, not from them. And so, as my angst started to change a little bit, that I shouldn't be upset about this, this is actually what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to highlight the fact that this short guy here doesn't just talk. There's a whole lot of action. And the action is because of you. And the reason why I'm able to do this kind of work and unshackle myself from special interest money, unshackle myself from the big corporate money, is because I got an army behind me. And it's big. And it's all across the state. And they're reaching out to this campaign from Grand Junction down to Durango, all the way out to southeastern Colorado, Lamar and La Junta, and all the way out to Rocky Ford, all the way up to Greeley and Fort Morgan. And people are reaching out saying, Representative Salazar, when are you coming out here? We got an army ready for you. And I think to myself, that credibility for these past 5 years, that's what's going to carry this campaign through. It's because it's the army of the people who vote that will carry us over the top. I'm a Colorado Chicano. I don't come from a rich community. We're poor, right? I'm the first in my family out of the multiple generations that have been here for 400 plus years. I'm the very first to go to law school. You know? So I don't come from this wealth that my opponents come from. But I grounded myself in the credibility of the people. And that's worth far more than its weight in gold. And so when I say that I'm also going to protect people from civil asset forfeiture, yeah, that's going to happen too. And when I say that I'm going to protect our Muslim American communities as well as our LGBTQ communities, oh yeah, that's going to happen. And when I say that I'm going to make sure and sue the hell out of anybody who tries to violate my daughters or my neighbors' rights to reproductive health, oh yeah, you know I'm going to do that too. And I'm able to do that without any fear whatsoever, because I know that my army is behind me the entire way. I really appreciate you guys. I do. And yeah, Edie and I were talking about it. I'm like, I'm a veterano of campaigns. I've won 3 of them. They've won none. And I know that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I know how to go the distance. I've done it multiple times, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. And as I always say, I'm willing to answer any questions that you have, and I'll give you a full answer. I don't do that politician's dodge. Thank you.
What's a good question, Dan? Yes.
Modular home parks, affordable living.
Modular home parks, affordable living, as Sharon and I talked about it just a little bit ago, I have one in my own house district where we have our these mobile home property owners who are giving people no time at all in terms of when they change your lease, right? Jacking up the lease amount, or evicting you, or saying that your lease is over with, or not paying the water, or having broken spigots, which means that that you guys are responsible for you know, faulty equipment that's costing, you know, tons of money in terms of lost water. Yeah, so as Attorney General, no one's really tried going after them. No one has, but I will, because this has become an issue in the state of Colorado, especially around the Denver metro area. And no one is challenging those property owners and their really bad conduct towards people who live there. I mean, I had my own community come up to me and say, look at this water bill that I have.
Yeah.
It's $1,000.
Yeah.
How can I pay for this? I said, well, why would you get a $1,000 water bill? Because the schmuck who owns the property, he won't fix the broken piping. And all we have all day long is water going through. All day long, just going through. So I've been working with the county commissioners to try to rectify those situations.
Okay.
But to try to get any legislation passed on a renter's bill of rights, that's really difficult to try to get it through the Senate. But I think as Attorney General, there's something that I can work on there. And I'm happy to take a look at it, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is RMGO and how did they threaten you?
That's the Rocky Mountain gun owners. Yeah, they're you know, hardcore alt-right Second Amendment.
Well, that's inferred.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they have their folks out, and I'm glad I don't have my daughters here, but you know, they would say things like, "How's Lily and Alex? You know, how do they like their schools at you know, at Mountain Range?" And you know, I mean, they would say things like that. I had to move my family out of the house to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law's house 3 times because we had some really credible threats, and so my best friend came and stayed with me at my house, and we had state patrol having to patrol the area as well as the Thornton Police Department, and they thought that kind of tactic would get me to back down off of my positions on gun safety legislation, and it never did. I'm like, dang, man, you're threatening a Chicano here from Colorado whose family goes back way back, and you think that this is the first time we've seen guys like you come and threaten us? I mean, for real, right? I was built for this moment. My ancestors built me for this moment. Yes.
There's a bunch of gubernatorial candidates who are talking about 100% renewable.
Yeah.
Kerry Kennedy's talking about 50% renewable. And that's a political move, right? It's not necessarily a technical move. So as AG, how do you navigate policy like that?
Yeah, so
policy like that?
Thank you very much for that question. Very first thing I'm doing is I'm going after the polluters. That's one thing that this Attorney General hasn't done, or the Attorney General before that, or the Attorney General before that too, and that happens to be my cousin, Ken Salazar, right? They've never gone after those polluters. And we have right now, as you all are all aware, we have oil and gas creeping into urban areas. It is driving down property values. I asked people to take a look at the Duke University study, which shows that when you live within a mile radius of a fracking site, your property value goes down 30%. This is people's livelihood, right? I mean, this is their biggest investment is their house. And so when we have an industry just thumbing its nose at people and taking their property from them, because that is a taking, and it happens to be a state-sanctioned one because the state's not doing anything about it, That tells me that they're being protected by that third branch of government, which is the judicial branch. And we have to stop that. As Attorney General, the force of that office is enormous. And I plan on using that entire force against this industry to stop their conduct. They can responsibly drill away from people, and they're still going to be held responsible for the environmental damages that they do. But I want to make sure that I focus my efforts on stopping what they're doing that's harming our environment and the people, particularly in the urban areas. So yeah, I'm going after them. They know it too. I've never been shy about that in 5 years. So yeah, they know I'm coming after them, and they're loading up. They're going to be loading up my Democratic primary opponents and the Republican opponent once I get to the primary. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, approximately 73 municipalities in the state criminalize homelessness. What can the AG's office do about that in terms of helping municipalities see the light?
I'm already working on it.
Different things.
I'm already working on it. I already sat down with the ACLU and I said, you know what, I'm going to win this election. I need to sit down with you guys and I need to figure out how I can use the Office of the Attorney General in conjunction with the ACLU to stop these municipalities from criminalizing the homeless. Right. So I am working on that right now, as well as a number of other things, such as going after Trump for not revealing his taxes, because they, under the emoluments clause, you know, he's not supposed to get any type of benefit because of his stature as the president. And I've already reached out to PARA to find out, are we already seeing a decrease or some type of harm to our state retirement system? They've been tracking it already since his election, and there is concern. So yeah, I'm going to go after him. That should be within the first 90 days of being Attorney General that I'll be going after him.
So you'll be joining with other AGs like New York and Washington?
Yeah, it's Maryland and DC right now. Yeah.
DC.
Yeah, but the way that, you know, each AG is going to have to fashion the lawsuit according to what's happening in their state. Maryland and DC are doing it because of, you know, the hotels and things of that nature. I'm looking at the investments. Is he trying to enrich himself in such a way that hurts the state of Colorado, particularly when it comes to our retirement? Because we oversee that. The state does. That's not a private pension. That is a state pension. And so if he's doing that, then that's certainly within the office's authority to go after him if indeed there is a violation of the emoluments clause. Al.
What can you do as AG to keep our daughters and sisters safe from domestic violence and child sexual abuse?
Yeah, so there's already a section that is set up, but we need to make sure that it's far more robust than what it is. You know, as part of the judiciary and the vice chair of judiciary, you know, we've helped set up a number of structures with respect to domestic violence and sexual assaults. We've brought in additional laws to protect our communities, but we need to have a far more robust system stemming from the Attorney General's office to address the situation. And that needs to stem not just in Denver, but it needs to go out system-wide throughout the state. And the AG's office can lead that effort and ensure that people are protected.
State is Colorado is one of the few states that don't fund DV services, sexual assault services. And, you know, I guess that's a legislative thing, but that needs to change.
There's so much that needs to change on that level. You know, we've been trying to increase penalties for violations, and we went after a couple of years back domestic violence abusers who have guns, and now we take away their gun rights if they engage in domestic violence situations, which I felt completely fine doing. That was another RMGO issue, by the way. Yeah, they came after us for that one too, because, you know, they want domestic abusers to maintain their gun rights. And so, yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot more that we can do to buttress what we're doing right now. Mike?
That voting issue that we're having right now with Trump asking for all our voting information and saying, what can you do to open up voting? I heard one great suggestion. When you turn 18, you're automatically registered to vote, period. Is that something you could do? Something that you could fight for?
Yeah, automatic voter registration. So we've done a number of things so far. The state of Colorado is, we've done some amazing things. So number one, when you turn 16, you go get your driver's license. you can already pre-register. So that's one of the first thing that we've done. We've done same-day registration on election day. It's actually working out all right. But this automatic voter registration is something that we definitely need to take a look at. How many of you guys know that in Mexico, it's automatic voter registration? Everybody is automatically registered to vote, right? And not to say that everybody votes, but you're automatically registered to vote. And I think that's exactly what we need to do. We need to open up our voting process in a manner that allows people the flexibility and the capability of being able to vote. Republican efforts to curtail voting rights, all this, kind of show me your papers before you vote, the voter ID stuff, that is completely contrary to what our country stands for. And we've fought that, and we've been very successful fighting it in the state legislature, particularly in the House, destroying all those voter ID bills. And as AG, if we get a bill in that's like that, a voter ID that happens to pass, I will consider it to be unconstitutional on its face, because pretty much every court is considering it to be unconstitutional across the board. And the Supreme Court has some issues about the voter ID as well. Yeah.
To follow up on Mike's question, from the federal level, we've got Chris Kobach's Voter Integrity Commission, and
is that what it's called?
right.
Yeah,
exactly. And I wrote Governor Hickenlooper about saying, like, can we shut this down and not send our data? And he said it's up to the Secretary of State. So as Attorney General, what can you do to both export Colorado's voting model, which is excellent and should, I think, be the model everywhere, with a paper trail and same-day registration and mail-in? It's a beautiful system. So is there any role for you to export that system to other states and to fight this Voter Integrity Commission?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that a lot. We have separation of powers issues. The Secretary of State is the constitutional office that administers the elections, right? And the Attorney General's office provides the advice for that. And so we have a system right now that allows for open records of certain information. And that's what this particular Secretary of State was hanging his hat on. I'm not so certain that was true. I think he was willing to provide more data than what Colorado law allows for. So as Attorney General, what I would do, number one, is I would speak with other attorneys general across the United States to talk about the legislation that I help co-sponsor to open up our election process, our voting process. So that's number one. Number two is to find out what we've done, what other states have done that are much better than our states. I mean, there are quite a few states that actually go a lot further than what we've done. And to bring that back and to advocate for that on a policy level as Attorney General, because a lot of people don't know this, but did you know that the Attorney General shows up at the Capitol all the time to argue on policy? They advocate for policy there. Attorney General just doesn't sit in an office and just enforce the laws. They're there as a policy advocate. And so, yeah, I would take on that role as a policy advocate, as every other Attorney General has done, to advocate for those things, surely. Yeah. Did I get your last question?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And I like to ask if I've answered your question fully, because I'm serious. I don't do a politician's dodge. A lot of people do that, and I just think it's very disingenuous and disrespectful. Let me go with him, and then I'll go with you, Bean.
I'm curious to ask you, do you think that as Attorney General, it's possible to address the systemic influence of special interests in Colorado?
Yeah, so that's what my campaign is totally against. I don't accept that special interest or the big corporate money. In fact, I just haven't as a state representative. And so basically, what you're asking me is how, as Attorney General, can I go after Citizens United? I think that's basically what you're saying. Is that what can you do to help stem that tide of corporate influence in our political system? Right. And I've wrapped my head around that one as well as a state legislator. What could I do as Attorney General to try to stop a Supreme Court's decision on a constitutional issue? because that's how they decided it. They said it was freedom of speech. And I guess the way that I would go about doing it is to start really challenging the idea that corporations are not people, right? I mean, they're just not, and that is one way of going about doing it. I haven't seen any other attorneys general hit it that way. I think maybe the guy in Ohio is trying to go in that direction, but I think that that might be the direction to go, is to really challenge whether corporations are people, because they're not. They don't get a right to vote, which is the quintessential part of being a person, is to be able to vote.
And they don't die.
And they don't die.
And they'll be capital punishment and they kill people.
And they're not held responsible when they kill
multiply.
people too, right? Right. Yeah, so I think that that's probably one way to go about it, is to start attacking it on that level. Yeah.
So you're talking about corporate money, corporate influence, Citizens United, but what we're also seeing is, millionaires, individual multi-millionaires are the ones who are, buying Senate races, congressional races, now governor races. So that's an equally important problem. What are your position about that? Is, kind of how are we going to keep, democracy being people voting as opposed to an auction where rich people buy office?
Yeah, so we see that happening right now with the Office of the Attorney General. A few of the candidates are, like I said, they come from very deep pockets. They come from places and they grew up in a very privileged life, and we're seeing that massive amounts of money are being funneled into their campaigns. Here's the thing, Ellen. I think we learned some lessons in 2016 about does money really influence people in the state of Colorado. And I think that by and large, particularly during the presidential primary, we saw that money didn't influence people in the state of Colorado. It was people who were finally upset enough about so much money coming in that we veered towards a candidate who didn't accept the special interest money like the other candidate did. And I'm not trying to bag on one or the other. I'm just saying that my read of the political landscape demonstrated to me that you can run a people's campaign and still beat the big money. You know who also did that? Mayor Webb did that. Norm Early had huge amounts of money, and Mayor Webb beat him on the ground. And you know who else did that? Federico Peña. Federico Peña wiped out Bill McNichols. Well, he didn't wipe him out. He beat him by 5,000 votes. And Rudy will say this. The reason why Federico Peña beat him by 5,000 votes is because Corky Gonzalez got those 5,000 votes for him in the Latino community. It didn't matter. The big money didn't matter. The fact is that what we have to do as a Colorado society is we have to continue to evolve and grow up in this political process. We need to tell the AG candidates and the gubernatorial candidates that your money means nothing here until you are out there with the people and you're marching with them and you're at the parades and you're at the rallies and you're putting your ass on the line for the people. Your money is just money. And that once we get that through, and once we start electing candidates, like really electing candidates who aren't being bought by the special interests and the big corporations, I think that we're going to continue to have problems. But I think this election is going to be a lot different. I can already see it on the ground. That's why people out in Grand Junction and Durango are saying, Rep, you got to get down here, man. We love you, and we got a bunch of people who want to meet you. And I'm like, I can't split myself in half, but I'll get down there as soon as possible, and we're really working towards that.
Joe, let me follow up on that and say, besides donating to your campaign, money's nothing, what can people in this room do to support your campaign?
Volunteer. So here is the big part. Here's the big part of it. It's not just volunteering. This is what everybody needs to understand sitting here. It's not just about volunteering. It's about going to your caucus and becoming a delegate to the state assembly. Because the more delegates I have to the state assembly demonstrates not only the force of the people, but I squish them there. And now they're having to think to themselves that they have to petition on for the primary ballot. And that's what this campaign is about. Is about that credibility that I built up with the people behind me, is ensuring that people get to the caucuses and become my delegates. That's what I need. That's what I truly need. And that's not, and I just don't think they're going to get that at that level. I just don't. So thank you very much. But the volunteer sheet is right over here. Who else? I think I saw a question over here. Oh yeah,
To what extent can you utilize the Office of Attorney General to advocate for criminal rights, like conditions in prisons or public attorneys, or just making sure that the system, remembers that even though you've committed a crime, you're still a person who deserves civil rights?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I'm going to take you back to 2014. Well, 2013 through 2017, I've long been an advocate for criminal justice reform, brought bills, successful bills on criminal justice reform, not criminalizing people such as people who are having a mental health crisis. So that bill passed this year. But and also it's the first contact bills that I think are really important. That first contact with police. I've brought bills that allow people to record police activity in the public. And the police didn't like that, neither did the DAs, right? So it's those first contact bills which keep people out of jail, number one. That's what we really have to focus on. But 2014, district attorneys brought a bill, and I brought this up at one of the town halls. I don't think you guys know this. 2014, the District Attorney's Council brought this bill. The District Attorney's Council was spearheaded by none other than George Brockett, who's now running for governor. He brought this bill that was supposed to have been brought before the Supreme Court's Rules Committee because it was changing the Colorado Rules of Criminal Procedure. And so, without telling the Supreme Court, he brought this bill to the legislature to change the Colorado Rules of Criminal Procedure that allowed DAs to gain access during discovery of attorney-client privileged materials and communications. Our Constitution doesn't allow for that, right? But they were trying to sneak this through. And I sat on Judiciary when I reviewed my bills, and I saw this bill come up. First person I called, because I'll rat on a brother if they try to do stuff like that, right? First person I called up was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And I said, Chief Justice Rice, did you know that this bill was coming through? And she says, no, I don't follow the bills, right? She doesn't. She's the Chief Justice. She tries to stay out of the politics. That's why she has lobbyists. And so I said, this bill goes outside of the Rules Committee. And she says, well, tell me what it does. So I told her. And she says, well, you guys can't decide that bill. You got to kill it. This is a separation of powers issue. I said, that's why I'm calling you. Right? So, get into committee. I was hoping she would show up, her lobbyists would show up, but they didn't show up. But I spoke with my colleagues on committee and I said, I talked to the Chief Justice. She thinks that this is a separation of powers issue. We have to vote this bill down. Brockett comes up to the table. And he starts saying, this dude's slick, right? I mean, he'll pour honey in your ear and it's actually poison. I mean, he's really slick. And he starts talking about why, this is just a simple change. This is just a simple change to the rules of criminal procedure. So I said, D.A. Brockett, there's a rules committee for this with the Supreme Court. Why didn't you take this through them? He goes, well, because I don't have to. I said, what do you mean you don't have to? You're trying to eviscerate a right that a criminal defendant has to privileged communications with counsel. And his response is, I just don't have to do it. Well, isn't this a separation of powers issue, D.A. Brockett? Well, I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe that's your problem. You don't know your constitutional law. This is a separation of powers. The judiciary has exclusive authority on deciding rules of criminal procedure. I just don't think that they do. So I start pulling up the case law on it. This is what the Supreme Court says, right? We stopped that bill. We killed that bill. But before killing it, I wanted to make sure that I bloodied him so that way he never brought that bill again. And I also gave a warning to them, too, to every single DA who was there, and mad props to Stan Garnett for not being there. He stood against that bill, like big time. Mad props to DA Garnett. But I bloodied them, and I said, for as long as I stay here on Judiciary, don't you ever bring a bill like this again. If you want to try and take a person's criminal or constitutional rights from them, I'm gonna bloody you every single time, right? And that's what I've been doing on Judiciary for these past 5 years, and now as Vice Chair of Judiciary, is that nothing escapes that attention that will hurt a criminal defendant. And I'm also very sympathetic, and I've been very supportive of victims' rights too. But there's a balance there. DAs don't think so. DAs think that everything should be tilted towards their favor. And that's not how our criminal system has been set up, and neither is our Constitution. So that's one aspect of it. Did I answer your question? Cool. I saw somebody over here. Sir, your hand was up? No?
We probably ought to wrap up, so maybe one more?
Yeah, one more.
Unless anyone's got burning questions.
I've got more political questions. So Republicans have tended to win the DA's,
AG's race?
The AG's race statewide for quite a while. What do you think it takes to change that? I mean, besides the political climate, what do you think it is bringing it to being a candidate that will really change that?
It's always ground game. It's always ground game. You know, we used to own ground game. Democrats used to own the ground game. And somewhere along the way, Democrats stopped going out into the rural areas. They stopped talking about water rights to people on the eastern plains and the western slopes, right? They stopped talking about how, you know, certain industries are hurting other industries, like oil and gas is hurting the fishing industry and the hiking industry, and you know, just that outdoor life, that why people come here to Colorado. We stopped talking about that. We start running candidates who have no credibility whatsoever in the state of Colorado because they just moved in 3 seconds ago, right? We start doing things that are very contrary to what we are as Democrats. And one of the things that I've heard all across the state is that the thing, and this is what people have told me, the thing that makes me mad about the Democrat is that you guys talk big and you deliver small. And you sell us out. And that for the past 5 years, that's why I've been building my reputation on, is never selling anybody out, right? I mean, to go full bore and to protect people. And I think that's resonating. Even on the Eastern Plains, when I went and spoke out in Morgan County, people are like, you know what? I feel like you're going to fight for me. I said, don't feel like I'm going to fight for you now. I'm fighting for you right now. You know, I got the battle scars to prove it. So yeah, I mean, that's what we need to do. I mean, all the money in the world, please. We're in 2017. Grow up. Start talking to the people and be out there with the people. That's what it's going to take. Yeah.
Well, I'll say the reason we've lost the races over the last many, many years is because we haven't had a candidate like Joe right. And at the end of the day, or she believes, and then follows through on that and has a proven record that they're following through on that, people are going to get off their couches and they're going to put their mail ballots back in the mail, or they're going to show up on election day. So, you know, I think that we had this idea in Colorado that we've got to be milquetoast, center of the road as Democrats, or we're never going to win, and it hasn't. It's not a recipe for success. So thank you for running, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Rich has been just a guiding light for me in this throughout this entire campaign. Just from from nuts and bolts, man. I mean, just helping me put this stuff together, and it's been. I've ran my house races. I know what to do. I know how to run a state house race, but to run a statewide race is a different monster altogether. And he's really helped me control that beast quite a bit and be grounded. And I really appreciate that of you. To give me that background knowledge of how to run a statewide race is awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And Maria with her just everybody that she brings in the community, the Latino community, and just throughout the state as well as nationwide. She's going to be one of the reasons why we're going to have so many credible candidates running in the future, is because she's building this army of candidates too. And it's the bench that we have to build, and we have to build it. Just like Amy said, everybody needs to run. I said, okay, when are you going to run, Amy? She goes, I don't know. But she would be such an incredible candidate, right? I mean, she's genuine. She's got the credibility, and she has the people behind her. That's what we need, is people like Amy to run. And Darren, particularly when he gets out of law school, I was telling I was telling Ian, my staffer. I said, so you know how people say, well, you know, I'm a rocket scientist, or I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm like, Darren's like literally a rocket scientist. I was like, and then, you know, he gets a full ride scholarship to DU, and now he's going to become an attorney. We need people like Darren to run too, you know. I mean, and not everybody's going to be the perfect candidate, for God's sakes, right? I mean, we're all going to disagree, and that's okay. It's okay if we disagree, just like when Edie and I disagree. It's okay. I still love her, you know. I'm not gonna go look to tearing her down because she's my homegirl, right? And that's what we have to do throughout the state. We have to remember that we're Democrats, we're smart, we're passionate, we're gonna disagree, and that's okay. Because at the end, we gotta come together, and we gotta beat back this alt-right, fascist, backwards way of thinking. And we gotta sell that message out to people who otherwise wouldn't vote for us. We gotta do that. So, yeah, thank you. I don't think I'm gonna make it to the next event. That's all right, though. Shirley, Eric, thank you again. I really appreciate it.